What's got me worked up and triggered today? There's always something. Right now, we've got leaders telling people to drive electric vehicles in response to high gas prices. It's the modern day version of saying let them eat cake. It really is. In response to increasing pressure being put upon Americans due to skyrocketing gas prices, President Joe Biden, or at least one of his aides, tweeted, loosening environmental regulations won't lower prices, but transforming our economy to run on electrical vehicles powered by clean energy will mean that no one will have to worry about gas prices. And it means that tyrants like Putin won't be able to use fossil fuels as a weapon. Okay, the first sentence of Biden's tweet's either an indication of total economic illiteracy or it's an outright lie. Perhaps it's both. I mean, of course, lessening environmental regulations would lower prices. Throughout North America, energy projects have been delayed and hindered for years due to onerous environmental regulations. Pipelines and other energy projects take years to start due to a huge burden of consultation, permits, studies, and mitigation requirements. Thousands of permits are sought and they're often rejected. Companies have spent billions cumulatively in the last decade just in the application process for new energy projects. Many of these projects never even got off the ground because the costs of application simply got too high and the likelihood of approval became too low. A grade 6 student, having been just taught what the word economics is, could look at that scenario and understand that reducing those regulations would increase supply while reducing costs. It's just math, guys. But Biden, along with other environmental ideologues such as Trudeau and his eco-extremist henchman Guilbeault, apparently can't figure this out. But you got to remember, trust fund babies like Justin Trudeau and career politicians like Biden, who's been a senator for 40 years before becoming president or something, they have no clue what it really actually is like for working people on the ground. They've never had to skimp and save in order to buy a used vehicle that was only somewhat reliable and but was still essential in order to get to work. They've never had to try and pack a number of children into a car in order to get them to daycare and then go to work and then juggle the same kids at the end of the day at the grocery store before heading home to feed them all. I guess those people could just ride a bike or take the bus or spend $80,000 and buy an electric car, right? I mean, Biden and Trudeau had nannies, chefs, and chauffeurs to take care of all those things for them. So I guess it can be understood why they don't understand how this is a problem for the majority of people. I don't think those fools intended to insult the vast majority of working North Americans when they dismissed the impacts of spiking energy prices. These privileged clowns really actually just don't have a clue. Who needs a car to go on vacation when you could just fly to the Bahamas instead, right? Maybe hit a private island with buddies like Trudeau does. Electric cars are an expensive luxury and they're only good for virtue signaling at this point. I mean, we've had well over a decade of pressure and massive subsidies towards electric vehicles, and still in the world, they only make up 1 in 250 vehicles on the road. In North America, that goes up to 2%. That 2% are typically high income urban living people who just want to have a virtue signaling second car so they can show their neighbors how green they are. I mean, electric vehicles are getting better all the time, but they're still worlds away from the reach of common folks. They're much more expensive than conventional vehicles. They have a terrible resale value due to battery degradation, which costs a fortune to replace them. And they perform terribly in cold weather and have a limited range. That might change, but it's not there yet. If indeed the world did truly start to shift en masse towards electric vehicles, the price of them would rise even further. Because, of course, we would see a run on the required precious metals, such as lithium and cobalt. The next disconnect with supply and demand from those pushing for electrical vehicles comes with the powering of them. And we heard all free charging stations. They abound right now, but they're anything but free in reality, and they won't stay that way for long. Somebody pays the bill for those charging stations one way or another, and it's usually the taxpayer. Now, think about what would happen to the electricity prices in North America if 100 million electric vehicles suddenly entered the mix. Our generation capacity is nowhere nearly strong enough to keep up with that, by the way. Carbon-based fuels and nuclear forms of generation are apparently evil, but they're the best we have. We'd need millions of windmills and countless square miles of solar panels just to meet this new demand. And that would take more precious metals, by the way. So I guess we'll have more slave labor in third world countries in order to mine that. The cost of electricity would skyrocket. And not only would it cost a fortune to charge an electric car, but anybody with electricity feeding their home is going to feel the pinch. Every business that requires electricity, which is all of them, will have to raise prices. And then inflation will rise even further. The costs for the increased transmission capability will be huge. Not to mention millions of homeowners suddenly having to spend thousands to put charging ports in their houses. Charging a car isn't like charging an iPhone, though Prime Minister Trudeau probably can't tell the difference. It takes a lot of power, and most homes aren't equipped to handle that. Again, for people like Trudeau and Biden, this isn't a big deal. I doubt they've ever even opened their own mail before and directly paid a utility bill. They've got people for that. But we have to look at those and pay those bills and experience the sticker shock. North America has some of the most abundant energy resources on Earth. Yet we're in the midst of an energy crisis because our leaders are ideologically driven imbeciles. The world's in a crisis and energy is a huge component of it. People are suffering and we might actually be moving into another recession. We have the means right in front of us to address the problem, but we need to get our green obsessed governments to get out of the damn way and let energy companies get to work in bringing more power to market. The just transition is a myth, and it's absurd to expect people to somehow simply jump over and get into an electric vehicle. Let them drive electric indeed, yes, the modern version of let them eat cake. It's unreasonable and it's insulting, and that's what's coming from our federal political leadership right now, and that's what's got me triggered today.